Well, hi there and welcome to Road Overload. I thought I'd just do a quick video, first of all, to say how incredible was the launch of the Artemis 2 rocket last night. I don't know if you saw that, if you stayed up to watch it. I did, and yeah, it was amazing just to see that technology and those four brave astronauts, let's be honest, who are now in orbit around the globe, on their way to the moon in the next few days. Absolutely incredible. And here we are on planet Earth. I thought I'd go over a few changes, a few things that have been keeping me busy of late. And if you own an Interceptor 650, then hopefully something that I'm about to tell you, some of the jobs that I've done, will be helpful to you for when you try to do these jobs yourself. Because if you're anything like me, then it's easy to be ambitious and try things and then realize that you don't have what you need to do the job. And certainly the jobs that I've done on the Interceptor in the last few days have been moderately challenging depending on what it is. So long story short is I've upgraded the front and the rear suspension on the bike to YSS. I've got the YSS front fork kit, and I also purchased the rear shocks, but not the ones with the piggyback cans on. So just the standard adjustable YSS, I think they're called the Z range of shocks. And I'll be doing some videos on what they look like and how they perform, and sort of my initial thoughts on whether it's good value for money. There are plenty of other videos on YouTube you can check that out for, but everybody has their own opinion. And I guess, yeah, it will very much depend on where you are and the sort of roads that you go on a lot, how often you use your bike. So I'll start with the easy jobs. The easy job was the rear shocks, to be honest. So there's not really much involved in that. You just have to be mindful to do the left-hand side first. If you watch, there's a YouTuber called Stuart Fillingham, who I'm sure you're familiar with, but if you're not, check him out on YouTube, who goes through the whole job in step-by-step detail. It's not difficult, but you definitely have to do the left-hand side first so that the weight of the rear swing arm and the rear wheel assembly don't come crashing to the ground. It's so much, you have to do them one at a time as well, so don't even think about taking off both shocks, but it certainly makes more sense to do the left one first. Other than undoing a couple of bolts, one at the top, one at the bottom, and loosening the exhaust a little bit, it was fairly easy. The harder thing has been to figure out, once they're in, how should I set it up? And I still haven't really found a definitive video that tells you how to do it. I know Stuart Fillingham has got one, but for me, I'm still a little confused as to the terminology of rebound and spring dampers. And if you haven't lived your life in the world of motorcycles, then a lot of these phrases that they talk about don't mean a huge amount. Sag and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, yeah, rear shocks, I probably got those done in less than half an hour, to be honest. The front shocks, however, different story. So the front shock kit is actually quite inexpensive comparatively, and you do need a special tool if you're going to do what I did. So a lot of people, when it comes to the YSS front upgrade kit, leave the dampers in. So you obviously have to disassemble the front wheel. So you take off, first thing you do is you take off the front brake caliper and the, I think it's the ABS sensor. And then you remove the wheel, and then you go about sort of each side removing the fork itself. You have to undo the headlight to loosen it up a bit. But I mean, it's not that difficult. You just have to remember what you've done and make sure that when you put it back together, you reverse the order. But a lot of people, what they do is they simply drain the fluid out, remove the spring, remove the washer. I think it's a 1 or 2. The top assembly needs to be undone as well. That little sort of, I don't know what they call it, the thing that's at the top that has a bolt head. And then they simply just, once they've drained it, they put the new spring in, they put the new adjustable suspension, Dubry, what's it, at the top, and then off they go. And I was going to do that, and actually that is the path of least resistance. However, I also watched quite a few other YouTube videos that said if you want to truly get the benefit of these adjustable shocks, then really you should drill the holes bigger on the damper, which sounds great. The problem with that is you do need a tool that is long enough, and we're talking over 1 meter really, long enough to go right down the center of the shock to where the damper is situated, which is right at the bottom, with the right size socket on it. And then underneath the shock, there is an Allen bolt, which you have to hold. And you then have to undo the Allen bolt whilst holding the top section. And it is a bit of a messy job, because as much as you drain out the fork oil, there's always a little bit left. And so I managed to get the fork out. And then there's there's different information on how many holes should you drill? How big should the holes be? Should you just drill 1? Should you drill 4? And in the end, I increased the size of the existing 2 holes from the tiny little pin prick that they are to 8 millimeters. And I did drill 2 extras as well, at right angles to those. So maybe that's overkill. The metal is so thick. I mean, it is so incredibly strong. I can't see how it would make any difference to the integrity of the strength of those dampers. But I figured if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. And worst case scenario, I could just go get some more dampers and repeat the process. Shout out to James Slick, who again is a YouTuber. If you have an Interceptor 650, he's got some really brilliant videos. Who kindly sent me the tool. Actually, it wasn't from him. He made it originally, and it gets sent for free to the next person who is doing this job. So I did the job, put it all back together. That took quite a while, actually, a couple of hours probably. And then I once again thought, well, how does it need to be configured? And in the end, I just tightened it a couple of times. And I took my bike out yesterday for the first time since doing the suspension mods to see sort of what it felt like. And 2 things. One, it was too hard, and I'll come back to that in a second. So when I went over a bump, I was like, oh my goodness, this is worse than it was before I changed it. But on the positive, going around a corner, it just feels like it's glued to the road now. Really, really massive difference on cornering. And I have had in the past when I've cornered, the rear wheel feels a bit skittish, I guess. I don't know how else to word it. But after doing this upgrade, it doesn't feel like that anymore. It feels really planted and like you're cornering on rails. I've heard that phrase before. I never really understood what it meant till I did the suspension mod. So going back to what I said, the suspension was really hard. And it turns out that the rear suspension and the front, so I'd followed Stuart Fillingham's advice, I think, and tightened and done 2 positive rotations on the front suspension, which stiffened it slightly. So I've backed that off half. But on the rear, they come, the dampening of it comes at 0. And in other words, is a slow damping, and you can adjust that. And they recommend that you adjust it from where it's at, positive click. So it's like a clicky thing at the bottom of the shock that they recommend you click between 5 and 10 as a starting point, and then adjust as you feel that you want to. And so I had put it straight to 10, wasn't the best, so I've backed it out back to 5, definitely improved it. But what I haven't done is at the top of the shock, there's another adjustment which compresses the spring. And obviously the more compressed that spring is, the harder the suspension is going to be. So my next job with the suspension is to back that off a little bit, try and get to a point where the suspension is soft enough so that when I go over bumps, I'm not being thrown off the bike, but firm enough that when I go round corners or when I go over a bump, I feel like the bike is still stable and planted. So I don't really know how to say it, but I think there's gonna be quite a lot of trial and error really with that suspension, and of course over time as the suspension beds in, I'm gonna have to keep doing this at least for a couple of thousand miles, I think, until the springs are sort of sorted, and then I can move forward. So that's one thing I've been doing, upgrading the suspension on the bike. So looking forward to feeling a bit safer on roads that are bumpier. But the other thing I've been doing is working on the garage to create a workshop area at the back, because during the winter, when it's freezing, the garage that I have is quite a large building and it's really badly insulated. In fact, it has no insulation and it's really, really cold. So I've been building a room at the back, which I'll show you on another video, just to enable me during the winter or when it's cold to be able to shut myself away, stick on a heater and get on with whatever I need to get on with. My next mod, probably next month, is to just replace the header pipes, which have still got a cat in them and they're quite heavy. And then my exhaust will be free flowing. I've obviously got the fuel light device, booster device, engine management device, emissions fixer upper, and I've also got the DNA air filter, so it's breathing freely. I just feel like the last piece of the puzzle is to allow the air to freely flow through the exhaust, which is not at the moment. So yeah, pretty excited about the summer, looking forward to what the warmer weather brings, and hopefully a few more trips out into the unknown. Let me know what your plans are for the warm weather, and I'll see you on the next video. Until then, keep the rubber side down and the rider side up.